see how long this one actually goes for. I don't want to ramble too much, but definitely I wanted just to go into the fact that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about how Viernes had some form of interest in Gray. We don't know exactly what's going on with it. I personally think that I think that he's seen Gray's ability before, and he wants to. I think he wants to test him because we know Viernes was capable of seeing everything that went on in the last arc, everything that went on in Gold Owl and in the building. He was fully aware of. So he saw Gray fight other alchemists. He saw just Gray's interaction with him. I would imagine too, just seeing him attempt at trying to fight a dragon without any form of abilities in a magic that is very similar to how he fights. I think it's very clear when you compare how he's acting right now to how he talked to Natsu. It's very different. Clearly, it's very different. Because you have to keep in mind, Viernes came out, he stayed in his dragon form, he barely talked to any of them at all. He just fought Natsu directly, and maybe that was one of the reasons, is to make sure Natsu was the only real fighter in there. Because they tried for a minute, and again, he saw Gray fight for a little bit, but it was almost entirely just Natsu, so there was never really a time where extensively he would have seen just Gray do things while they were fighting. Maybe if they all stayed in a group fight longer, he might have started to talk to Gray specifically, but he stayed in his dragon form the whole time, and every time he spoke, he was extremely hostile. He did not want to even really deal with this. He didn't like them. He was very aggressive every single time he opened his mouth and he had something to say. So when it comes to here, he originally was in his dragon form. He went into his human form, and he's actually been talking to Gray in, like, he's just having not a direct conversation, but it's like he's looking at Gray, he's just letting Gray do stuff at him, and he's responding to things that kind of like that are going on. He's not really being like, hey, what is your name? Tell me about you. Where do you come from? What's like the guild you're in? Gray's just doing stuff, and Viernes is just commenting of just like, yeah, that's not gonna work. Nope, I can do this. Nope. He's commenting just on the battle. And when Celine shows up, obviously he fights Celine directly. Celine was also in her human form, so he was gonna stay in his human form. It was just something that was in a moment to kind of, I think, to demonstrate his mindset, because he just went directly towards that. That was his priority. Now he had to deal with somebody that was equal to him, and he has to actually fight her. Is she going to stay in her human form? Are they going to get in a full fight? Because obviously they don't want to get in a full fight in a lot of ways, because it also leaves them exposed. And again, one thing to add about the chapter just really fast is Viernes' eyes they don't have the shading thing at all that Celine had the whole time that she was doing, demonstrating that she was mind controlled. Not really mind controlled. I wish we had a direct explanation of how it works, because it seems to work similar to how, kind of like how the whiteout magic worked, to where it makes you like you're still your character, but it's like your allegiance and loyalty is set to a different position, and you are just acting the way you are from a completely different standpoint that is beneficial to what was going on. And the whole dragon locker was making people turn into dragons and such. But as it were, Viernes, I think that the way that it works in Partial, and the Signario sisters doing it, I think makes sense, is that alchemy is involved in a way, because it would make sense of why the other dragon gods, if there's like some dragon magic from Ignia powered through alchemy, and like done some weird things that is able to loophole their level of power and whatnot, and their resistances. But with Viernes, he as a higher level alchemist, it makes sense of why he wouldn't be able to even be controlled by this. This is just something that maybe for a moment got him, and then he just broke out, because it's just oh yeah, this was just a low level thing for me. You got me for a second. I was kind of dead for whatever, but thanks. But he's actually having a conversation in an indirect way, and I think it's really interesting with Gray. Because again, with Natsu, he didn't want to talk to him at all. With Celine, it was just like it was just direct conversation to where what's going on. Not really of like he's questioning her, but like the events of what they're doing. He's just commenting on that as they're doing moves and fighting each other. But once he got to the point too, this is really important. Celine Selene, once the lacrima came out of her body, it made it so like she just, as she said, she lost a majority of her power. So there's clearly some form of power drain that comes with that. And I mentioned that's like the only way that Gray could win the fight, you know, because he could just do something that kind of just tech outs Viernes. But I think at that point, Viernes will just turn into a concept and leave or something, and just kind of like bounce out and then go and rejuvenate his powers and then come back or something. I ultimately think that he's going to just kidnap Gray and leave, but that's something that I'll get to in a second. But with Selene was vulnerable. He could have killed her. He could have went for, obviously, like Gray and Wendy and Carla would try and do something, but like he can just go in his full dragon form, and Selene's only option would be to flee. So he immediately just locks them out of the fight, and he's like, no, like I'm actually enjoying myself. And again, that's important. If you have somebody who in a previous fight, once he's in direct combat, he's not being a let's back and forth kind of conversation. He was just like, die, I can eradicate you, you foolish mortals, I will destroy you. He had nothing that was insightful to his character. It was all just complete and total, like, seeing red, wants to get rid of you. And it was just like all the combined abilities, and then the thing set up with Athena, it just all worked in against Viernes' favor. But now he's in a spot where, in a way, when you think about it again, the way that he fights in this style, he just is in his form. He turns stuff into gold, seemingly, and just throws it at his opponents, or does things that, turn birds into gold, turns the ground into gold, and forms that into, hands. Turns people's clothing into gold, so it just weighs them down. And then obviously he can just turns people into solid gold. But with Gray, and that's again another thing we saw when he was fighting them. He could do this big AOE that's turning people into solid gold. He's not doing that with Gray. When the way that it's happening is like he's just going, every time that Gray tries something different or tries a different approach, Viernes just counters it, comments on exactly what's going on, tells Gray, nope, that's not going to work either. Because even in this chapter, Gray turning ice into ice flames from just, again, because it starts out, he makes just ice in the shape of fire. It gets more defined, and then it actually becomes fire that he's able to use. And after that point, he then targets and directly freezes the air, which makes sense of when he became Juvia for a while, and he was able to feel the moisture and water in the environment and in the general atmosphere. Now he's able just to directly target, because he's been able to freeze air and wind-based things before, but he's never been able to like directly target the air alone unless he just kind of AoE freezes. But this is kind of a different style of that. It's because you're not freezing generally, I guess, the area, and then you're just kind of making it a freezing cold environment. You're directly freezing the oxygen in the air, and you're targeting it. But with Viernes, even now, Viernes should be able to be like, okay, and then he just uses alchemy and creates oxygen again. Plus, he's a dragon. I mean, I don't really think it's really much of a problem. I mean, he could just turn into his dragon form or move. I mean, Gray can keep freezing the area and freezing the oxygen in the area in the air, but Viernes should be able to counter this without too much of a problem. I think personally, it's more of showing Gray's clever nature, and I think that's going to be, again, something that we're going to see next chapter is going to. It's going to have further expansion on Viernes' perspective on Gray, because again, if you have somebody who, when it was everybody against him, he wasn't going crazy, but when it became just Natsu, he started to get really aggressive, and obviously Natsu was is using fire, and that's something that Gold is going to be vulnerable to. But on top of that, I think he just looked at it as if he was in a fight with another hostile dragon, so he was just acting like a hostile dragon. Now with Gray, he is just acting again like somebody who is experiencing a much more junior fighter of the same way that you fight. So I think that with him, because I'm hoping at some point we get, maybe like through this, we get a little bit of explanation on him and Duke's general history, because I think that if we get explanation on alchemy through him, a little bit more lore, my guess would be that at some point in the past, he invented alchemy. Maybe in his human form, he ruled over a bunch of humans, and he likes just doing alchemy shit. And he's maybe because he seems to like generally want to keep to himself, and has a lot of minions created because he created a concept embodiment of Duke. Duke made a bunch of artificial wizard dolls, or sorry, alchemist dolls. I guess wizard if you count God Serena too. So really both. But in a way, a lot of his people, like his direct like people that worked for him, and then his other two people. Well, in Gold Hour, you had the Signario sisters who were actually like mind altered and worked for Ignia. And then you can count Athena, but Athena was a creation of alchemy, so he probably kind of looks at it like that. Plus, with Duke, he already had that kind of figured out. So for him, like I believe that he just has an interest in people of this style, because when you think about Duke, we know that Duke at an alchemy level was a prodigy and seemingly the best alchemist within the verse, like besides Viernes, like the greatest human alchemist. So for someone like Viernes, because with magic, you got to think about this too. With dragons, relatively all the dragons end up learning magic, because you know that there are dragons that just have their innate dragon abilities. They have their own dragon racials and whatnot. Then there are dragons that expand and learn magic. And seeming Viernes has ability with magic, but it doesn't seem to be what he does much. He clearly focuses on alchemy. So I would imagine he just, as a character, is going to have a interest in alchemy. Whether he creates it, or say if maybe the idea of like where he ruled and why he has this style is he went to where alchemy itself was created, but it was very low level, like super bare bones within their world, and he's the one that advanced it. So he took something he found that was interested in, and he saw like the growth of it from borderline crumbs into a fully scaled like major practice on the continent. Because you got to keep in mind too, it's alchemy itself isn't massive around the world, but we like characters in the verse have mentioned alchemy before, so alchemy is a known thing. It is not just prominent outside of Giltina. It seems to be pretty prominent in Giltina, and obviously Gold Owl itself as a guild had some high levels of skill and capability, and like stuff like the Philosopher's Stone, you're able to pull out through all these combinations, pull out a concept and give it physical form. It's just pretty crazy, especially from at a character of that level. So when it comes down to it, you have all this information around a character that I think is tied to what's going to happen expanding Gray, because Gray now, through just seeing how Viernes fights, because you got to keep in mind, Viernes used his gold rush, turned everything around him into gold, and started using gold and stuff in the environment. And he even mentioned stuff like he turned the air into magic. So Gray is imitating and learning from watching him fight, and goes from there, and combining things that he knows with stuff also that's going on to further just expand his own moveset and his skills and capabilities. And I think that once we get to the next chapter, we're going to see more from Viernes that comments on that and things that he likes. Because if somebody like Duke, because if you think about it too, someone like Duke, he would have seen Duke start out with alchemy, because we know that Duke started out with magic and was already of a decent age when he switched to alchemy. So Viernes probably saw him from start to finish and was like, oh, this guy is a natural. And somebody like Gray that uses abilities that are similar but aren't directly in alchemy, he probably would be like, this kid is a prodigy. What could I do with this guy? This guy would be a great alchemist. Because all of the dragon gods are all like have their own thing going on. And I think it would be so much cooler if Viernes is, because of how alchemy works, he's brought back and he pretty much goes rogue and he's just his own thing in the arc, kind of like how I'm hoping it's Doggermag, but whatever Ignia went to go check out, and you just have now all the dragon gods all active at once, and Viernes is like, well, I don't really care about this whole turning people into dragons thing. I got an alchemy thing going on, and I'm taking this guy with me. So I'm so intrigued on their interactions and what it's showing us about Viernes' character without, again, giving us all of it at once. You just have to think about how his interactions have been and why exactly he's behaving right now, not crazily. Like he's letting Gray just do different attacks and come at him. He's barely responding back with aggression. He's barely attacking back. He could do so many crazy things or just turn into his dragon form and kill Gray, but we know that he wants to fight Gray. He's having fun and he's enjoying their interaction. Once we get to the next chapter, after he's freezing air, creating ice flames, as I believe that Gray is going to do a couple more of those, and then Viernes is just going to be like, I got to teach this guy alchemy. Imagine what this guy is going to be capable of if I teach this guy alchemy. Little does he know, all Gray is going to do is learn, Gray will learn alchemy, but autistically at the extent of only in ways of benefiting ice. And he's just going to be like, listen, you can make things other than ice. Stop turning stuff just into ice. Literally, you can turn into other stuff. Well, he's like, okay, what else do you have? Well, watch this. I can turn into an idea, the concept of myself, but as a sentient idea and not exist while existing. Watch. And then Gray's just standing there and he's like, okay, now you do it. And Gray's like, watch me turn into the cold. And he's like, stop making it about ice. I think that would make a lot of sense too if Gray could turn into ice from this. Maybe we'll see that when he advances, because it's like if he's watching this guy do things to the extent in gold, he's going to try and see his extent in ice. And if you have Gray get to where he can become ice, one, he could ignore Ice Shell because he could turn into Ice Shell and then just use, you literally just be like, well, I'll use alchemy to turn part of that back into me and then have someone permanently frozen and just maybe layer freeze them over and then turn the rest of him back body. So he just permafrost someone forever just at a surface level of their skin and just becomes busted. Or he could turn into cold and ice, and then similar to Ice Make, where he can shape anything, he could just freely mold his body and do attacks and anything he wants and reshape as he pleases, all up to his imagination. Again, it could be so wild of what Gray could do from just learning off of Viernes and how this is going to go. And he doesn't seem interesting. He could have just put Wendy and or put Celine and Carla in the little wizard blocking bubble, but he put all three of them because Wendy's a prodigy at enchanting. We know that Wendy is extremely capable of enchanting and a very fast learner, and he's just yeah, no, locks her out too. He could get rid of him. He doesn't want to. He's just no, I'm busy with this. And I think that once these chapters progress and we see where things are going, because one of the things I really see happening are the characters getting separated for a period of time. And I think that's the whole point of we shouldn't have split up, because now they're randomly getting sorted back together and moving around and passing each other. Natsu's almost near Urza, but he's probably going to leave and go somewhere else, go to where Bestie is at or go to where Igni is at. Who knows exactly what's going to go on with there. I think everyone's going to kind of get separated for a while, because if you think about this too, if everyone has their own thing that kind of separates them and gets them all spread apart, it also sets them up to all have their own personal advancements as things go. And everybody right now, cannot even argue, and this is one of the things I'll close out with this, you can't even argue Natsu and Lucy didn't just have that. Lucy just got a Mercphobia key. And one of the things, I'll do a video on, I've been meaning to do on a video for a while, but the fact that not only does she have the Mercphobia key, which is great, but when when Mercphobia was talking about how she doesn't really need, it's not just limited to celestial spirits, and it's more about summoning. And Lucy's already shown through in Ellentear when she was boosted from everything going on, she was able to summon without the keys. So Lucy, if she combines these ideas, she will be able to get to where she can just summon the Celestial Spirit King without breaking a key, because she could just directly open a portal and summon him in theory. But also, Mercphobia key, she could do something busted without, it would just be a power level limit to where it would be a lot of her magic and using it, summoning the Celestial Spirit King, or just summoning Mercphobia and just, game ending it. Natsu with the whole thing about eating Bestia's flames and unlocking his, this true latent potential power that he's been I'm guessing his demon powers and not specifically his dragon powers. Maybe he'll actually be able to use his Ethereal side at will, which would be really cool. And then I think Urza's going to have something with either getting some form of either custom armor or weapon made for her, or an ancient, lost weapon or armor that she's going to go acquire and be able to wield. It's going to be one of those two. Either one of those two I think would be great. There's always the Jalal to pair opportunity, but like I would prefer not to have like, I don't know, it would have to get really crazy if it was her and Jalal versus Wed. But I mean, like, I still think that it'd be really cool, but I kind of want that just to be an Urza fight. It's really hard, but we'll see what's exactly with that. And then Wendy, I think Wendy's is gonna have something with Celine, and like I don't really know exactly what's gonna be, but if she's left out with Celine, maybe Celine and her are going to go and like back to Elentier, and like Wendy's gonna be able to practice her enchanting in a lot of like weirder ways with like spirit arts and whatnot involved, and she's gonna be able to because it obviously like just having the critical magic or there, she'd be able to practice a lot more freely, and she would just have like a very potent environment to just freely experiment with her magic and become a fully fledged enchantress. Because like Wendy's very capable, but she's not as like freely crazy as Irene, and I think that's just from experience of like having it. But if Wendy gets an environment where she's seen a lot of ideas before and they will do a lot, she can expand there. And then obviously with Gray, it sets up Gray perfectly if Viernes wants to kind of go do his own thing, and he takes Gray, and it's like it, kidnaps Gray, and Gray's just like, ready for like a fight in there, and Viernes, like, they get to wherever he takes him, maybe back to Goldau or something, and Gray's like in a fighting mindset, and Viernes like, what are you doing? Like, I'm just here to show you stuff, man. Can I just show you alchemy? Listen, let's not even talk about like that fact I kidnapped you or what. Let's just talk about the fact that I got this cool thing. I just want to show you. And he's like, you don't have to, you don't have to learn it, but let me just show you. I think it would be really cool. And that's one of the things actually I do want to add just as an idea. I think it'd be really cool to kind of put him in a spot where he's trying to, he's so interested in another alchemy project, because you also keep in mind, maybe that's why Duke faked his death and we have that whole situation, is because Viernes has like almost an obsession. You could have like an obsessive personality when it comes to like alchemy prodigies, so he had to like die and get away from him. That is partially why it is. Who knows? And then you could have like with Gray, where like, he really wants to teach this guy alchemy. Like, it'd be a way to show a different side of his character, and maybe like not make him as like, show him not to be like super crazy. Because again, the thing about him that was always weird is we didn't really have much for like his character side at all. But when you think about him, he's not like Alderaan, where he's, at least so far, like, he hasn't been really kind of super hostile towards humans, and he clearly like was fine with humans in his guild, and even he wasn't hostile or like super like weird about the like lower level alchemists, or seemingly like the people in his guild didn't have like a darker nature to it, like they lived in some alchemist war camp getting ready to go out and kill some wizards or something. It was more so just like, yeah, they're doing alchemy and trade. Like, what I want is, it's like he's trying to invite Gray to his club. I think that's what I want to kind of say. Like, if you make the video just at the end, like, I want it to be something funny like that, where it's like, if he has people, he looks at it like a scale. He sees regular people as like, yeah, whatever, slaves, workers, whatever, don't care. You have alchemists, he's like, okay, these guys are kind of cool. And then the better you are at alchemy, he's more interested in you. And someone like Gray, who just has like the prodigy level of raw talent that he would hopefully sees in for alchemy, and he's like, this guy isn't doing alchemy, I need to get him to learn how to do alchemy. How do I do it? And he's just trying really hard to get Gray into taking the craft. And then he ends up just kind of being, okay, fine. What if I make a promise afterwards? I'll take you back. And Gray's just like, okay, whatever. So he just gets locked into hanging out with this guy. Because again, I think it'd be cool if Viernes is a rogue kind of card that maybe through events he's able to turn around, and we see one of those dragons that is hostile towards humans and doesn't really like humans, but maybe Gray wins him over, and that could be a cool thing too. Because in contrast to Alderaan, we had a crazy death cult ritual once he woke up, whereas Viernes, again, if he likes alchemists, at least he has some form of attachment to humans that at least that Gray could bridge, and maybe he could get to where he becomes an ally. Who knows? Because he hasn't done anything overly cruel yet, and I think that's at least a tell. Maybe he'll start to trade up later, and he'll become a little bit more aggressive. But I think the next chapter or so, he's gonna really just show how much like he wants to kind of like just interact with Gray specifically, and that he's interested in Gray's capabilities. So we'll see. I'm feeling some form of short time skip. You know, maybe another like 6 months to a year once things kind of get settled and characters have to get ready for events, and all these new dragons out in the world can kind of just start to spread and form up a new age. But we'll see. There's a lot. I'm waiting a little bit further into this arc before I really talk about that of where the world can be at in the next couple of years of the verse, if assuming that some of these people turned into dragons are permanently now and they're not able to be turned back. Because the only place we've really seen like turn back was in Ermina, and that was at the very start. So everyone else we don't know. But anyway, before this video gets too long, it's already 26 minutes. I just really wanted to. There's so much of interesting information that I feel like has already been shown to us. If you're just looking at interactions and showing and comparing it to what he was like with Natsu and stuff and other people, and again, he directly said that he's enjoying himself fighting with Gray, and he could have taken the opportunity to go after Selene, but didn't. He's more interested in this. This is something that he's just like, huh? Because again, if you think about it, him running into a potential prodigy in alchemy is something that he's not gonna see every day. This is something for him that he probably only experiences, like maybe he's only experienced this a handful of times, and maybe this is like the one that is like the most to him, because he's probably seen alchemy prodigies. But imagine he sees somebody that is like a prodigy in the style already, but is in magic and in the way he conducts himself and fights, and he's just like, imagine what this guy can do if I get him into alchemy. So we'll see. Other than that, comment below, tell me your thoughts about this and what exactly you think about coming forward out of this, because you have to keep in mind too, this is another thing I want to throw at the end. He locked all three of them out of the fight. Maybe Selene will get powerful enough to where she opens a portal and helps Gray somehow, brings Gray some cool super ice from another dimension. That's another thing I want to do a video on, is like what Selene can do in this fight and the contrast to Natsu versus Zero, which I'll talk about later, but we'll see as the fight goes. Other than that, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. It's very cool because we've been waiting. The people who have not given in to the Gray memes have been waiting for pretty much this fight to really kind of rev up, and Viernes locking him out of the fight pretty much ends any argument of like Wendy or Selene is going to be the one to get the spotlight for the Viernes fight. So Viernes pretty much just noped him out and says, nope, this is for Gray. So anyway, we'll talk to you on the next one.